budget and CIP for fiscal year 22-23. So this is the dry run as the team is getting ready. So I'll turn it over to Lisa and her team.
Great. I will just do a quick introduction.
Maybe Walfred should take roll call. I mean, since this isn't an official meeting, we got to give him practice.
Yes.
Right, we'll start with roll call. We'll start with Mayor Ruddock.
Here.
With Vice Mayor Brownstone.
Here.
Council member.
Sorry.
It's okay. You're learning.
City Manager Nisbet.
I am here.
All right. Lisa Lopez.
I'm here. You don't have to call the rest of us, Walfred.
Okay. Got it. All right.
Thank you. We'll leave you off the hook. Well, Ken, if you want to start sharing your screen, and I will just do a very quick introduction. Thank you all for agreeing to this meeting this evening. As you know, we've started the practice of having a finance committee meeting prior to the first budget hearing. We'd love to get your feedback, show you where we're headed with this year's budget. And I just wanted to thank Brian and Ken. This is why I wanted to do the introduction, for all the hard work they've been putting into this, and recognize that this is Ken's first budget as finance manager. So I will, Ken, if you want to show the agenda. So tonight we'll follow the usual format. We'll go over revenue summary and highlights, talk about the expenditures and changes to the budget that we foresee for next year. We have some changes happening to our capital improvement plan that we'd like to run by you. And then finally, Ken will go through the financial outlook. And we'll finish it off with Brian talking about a new thing that we're adding to the budget this year. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Ken now.
Thank you. Hello, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Brownstone. So what I have on the screen is our revenues, a comparison of our current budget with what we're proposing for next year. For starting with TOT, at mid-year, we adjusted upward to 7.2. And then for next year, we want to propose a budget of 8.7. It's quite big of an increase. What goes into that 8.7 is that we are assuming that the hotels do similar activity as they've done this year, but it just includes, or is approved, a TOT increase. It went up to 14% this past July. It's going to go up to 15% this coming July. And that's what that 8.7 number includes. We also reached out to our TOT service provider to get what their number was for us next year. It was very similar. They also came up with around 8.7 as well. So that's an increase of about 1.5 or 22%. And we still think this is a fairly conservative number, a little bit more. It's quite a bit, but we still think it's a conservative number. And I do want to highlight that we have passed our pre-pandemic levels. Right before the pandemic, our high was about 6.8. So even when you account for the tax increase, we have recovered to that level. Property taxes, we want to increase it slightly to 3.4. This is based off of what the county thinks the assessed values are going to be. They think it's going to increase. So we adjusted our number to align with theirs. For us, that would be about a 3% increase. Sales taxes, we want to do $3 million for the year. We consult with a sales tax consultant. They're usually pretty good about where we end up. So that's that number that you see there. And then that also is back at our pre-pandemic level. Right before the pandemic, we were at $3 million as well. All of the revenues, not much change, less than 1% of an increase. Some things have gone up, some things have gone down, but mostly relatively flat going into next year. Overall, we're proposing our revenues would be 21.2 million, which is an increase of 1.7. Again, most of that coming from TOT. Have the final revenue for our general fund up on the screen. The additional highlights to mention, again, most other revenues are pretty flat. I do want to bring to the committee's attention about the sheriff balancing account. I'm not sure if the committee remembers, but through our contract with the county for our sheriff services, they have a balancing account. They bill us for what they think they're going to charge us. And then at the end of the year, they bill us again, or they give us a credit based on what actually happened. Over the years, they've been crediting this account. It's money that sits with the county. We can withdraw from it at any time. These past few years, we've been withdrawing from it because of the pandemic. But now for the upcoming fiscal year, we're proposing not to withdraw from it and just to let it sit and be available to us at a later date. And then finally, we have the American Rescue Plan funds. We're going to be receiving our last payment of 1.5 million. It's expected in July. It could show up a little early, but we expect it to show up in July. That is the second and last payment. Those funds will sunset. So with expenditures, starting with salaries and benefits, total compensation is proposed to be 6.6 million. That's about a $980,000 increase, or 17%. What's included in that number is 2 full-time personnel and 1 part-time staff. The community services manager, which is part of a new division that we're proposing. There is a slide following after this, talking more about that division, but a community service manager, a admin and analysis, and a part-time staff and an intern to support the sustainability and engineering division of Public Works.
And Ken, if I could just jump in here, just to tie this back to what was brought before the HR subcommittee probably 4 or 5 months ago. Robert, you're on that subcommittee, so you received that presentation. Debbie, you're not, but I think we talked to you about it individually. Plus, there was a follow-on action that came to the full council, so you certainly got a taste of it. But you might recall 3 or 4 months ago, we were starting to think ahead of what our needs were, and we came up with three areas that we have needs, and created kind of 3 very conceptual positions. We didn't have job classes for them. And those 3 positions were a housing position, an economic development position, and a grants position. And we presented those to the HR subcommittee. We got feedback from Councilmember Brownstone, Councilmember Jimenez. We then took that feedback. The housing position did move forward, and the council took action on that, and I can speak to that in a second. But the feedback we got on the other 2 made us rethink them a little bit. And so what you're seeing here now, we're still working on that, and that'll be a part of the budget when it comes to the council. But we kind of eliminated one of those. So based on the input we received, we kind of collapsed the 2 ideas, economic development and grants, into this new unit that Ken mentioned, calling it now Community Services Manager, and it will handle a multitude of duties. And so when we bring the budget forward, we can certainly go into more detail. That's something Matthew's been working on quite extensively. And then the admin analyst would be more of a generic position that we already have. That's a job class we already have. So what you're seeing is still 2 positions, but it's definitely a revise of what we shared 3 months ago before mid-year. So if there's any questions on that, we can certainly go into that. But I'll allow Ken to go on.
I just want to say, I would like to see job descriptions.
Yeah, that's something excellent. So I'll make a note and I'll let Matthew know, and we'll get the admin analyst again is existing, but the community service manager, and that's even a working title, just so you know. We're struggling with the name, and we've had various versions of it. Should it have the word economic in the name? Should it, you know? And Matthew doesn't really particularly like the name community services manager. He thinks it's too generic. So it's a work in progress, but yes, as soon as we have a draft description, we will get that forward. So I'll make a note to Matthew as soon as the meeting's over. Thank you.
Would the administrative analyst work for Lisa?
The administrative analyst, no, would be in the same unit. It would be in the same unit in the city manager's office.
Okay.
Lisa's version of an analyst is an HR analyst, and that's the position that she just filled through promotion.
But I still like the way Debbie thinks.
Yeah. The administrative analyst, well, I'll go just a little bit further on that class. It is an existing class, but it's a class we kind of left behind. And Lisa, jump in if I'm not getting this quite right. But we moved kind of before my time, we moved more to a management analyst, and then there's a management analyst and a senior management analyst. This position was always kind of the entry level of those three. It was always intended that administrative analyst was the entry level, lowest level, then management analyst, then senior management analyst. But we essentially stopped using the administrative analyst. I don't think we have any have any right now. So it was that idea of actually going back to an entry-level position in that series. Ken, back to you, unless there's questions about that.
Okay. So, yep, those three positions are included in that increase, but also they don't make up the entirety of that increase. That increase also includes a full year of the personnel changes that happened at mid-year. So at mid-year, we had some reinstatements, and then we also had results from our class and comp study. For that current fiscal year, we recognize a portion of it because it happened midway through the year. Next budget year is going to be the full year. So that increase, that portion of it is increasing our compensation as well. And then finally, what's in there is your usual year contractual increases, which are COLA and merit. Moving on to supplies and services, total supplies and contract services are at 10.1 million, a $1 million increase or 11%. So I'm sure everyone is aware of inflation. Just recently, it's been marked at 8.5%. That also affects us as a city. And how that is affecting us thus far is that the costs in our existing contracts are increasing. They're increasing by 511,000, and with the bulk of that coming from the sheriff contract. The sheriff contract alone is going up by, our public safety in general is going up by 400,000. And then from there, a lot of other contracts are going up. Some are tied to CPI, some are just increasing. Mostly engineering and planning and our maintenance contracts. The other half of that $1 million increase is from the restructure and the beefing up of the economic and community vitality. So as mentioned previously, originally we had two divisions or units, CMO's office and community services. Both invested in economic ventures and community service ventures, but now we want to combine them under one, and we want to combine them under what was formerly known as community services and call it economic and community vitality. For clarity, I have highlighted the new items between those two divisions. So what's new for next budget is under the city's manager's office would be CARES program support. the Johnson House, and support for annexation and grant funding. The second note, there's new news about the Economic Advancement Center. The county is allocating $2.5 million. That's not reflected in this budget, but it is important to note that investment in our economic activity. And then finally, under the new division, the increase is the CSFA grant increase, the feasibility study, community learning analysis, and then the continuation of the economic consultant. Overall, the budget impact would be $542,000, but it's important to note that $200,000 of that is going to be grant funded. And we intend to keep looking for additional funding sources outside of the city. Other highlights in this budget, as council and the community is probably aware, at the pandemic, it was decided to defer the library payment into the following year. That created a double payment. We have since paid that this year. So what that means is we're back on our original debt schedule going into the next budget, meaning that there's going to be some savings there. Additionally, our pension unfunded liability payment will be $1.5 million, which is at about a 11% increase. This is a summary table of what I just discussed previously. Overall, our current budget is at $17.9 million. The proposed budget for next year is 19.4, which is about an increase of 1.4 million. 2 million of that coming from salaries and operations, and some savings from debt service. Moving on to the capital improvement plan. So this year, our general fund contribution will be about $3 million, about a $400,000 increase. But overall, our total CPI budget is at $14.6 million, with the big one, of course, being Carter Park. The big difference between 14 and the 3 is that we fund some capital projects outside of the general fund, including special revenue, impact fees, grants, and sewer or enterprise funds. We do have some challenges and concerns that we do want to bring to the committee's attention. The first one being 880 Stone Pine. We purchased this property back in 2020, and with the intention to build on some infrastructure. Due to the cost of construction supplies, the bid has exceeded the initial budget for it. It's been exceeded by about 2 million. Is over what we initially anticipated for. Right now, we're working within the current CIP allotment to address it. We hope to not be able to increase the general fund's contribution for this project. But what that does mean is that we may have to change our priorities as far as which projects we do take on next year. There's also inflation.
And Ken, if I can just underscore everything you just said, because I think it's important. So just to put an exclamation point on this, yeah, this was, I don't know if it was necessarily unexpected, but a little disappointing, I would say, when we received the bids for the public works yard, as Ken just said, higher than we thought. Again, not completely unexpected given the reasons he gave that this phenomenon is happening right now. Had the bids come in accordance with our budget, that item to award that contract would have actually been on the council's agenda at the last meeting. And so when they came in, we realized we had to put our heads together and scramble a bit to figure out what to do in terms of either cutting aspects of the project or trying to find additional funding to cover the gap. So that's a work in progress right now. That's something that Ken, Lisa, John, and others have been working on. And it is our intention to bring that award of that contract back to the council. But as he said, we're looking at having to maybe transfer funds from other capital projects to this one, since this is the most immediate priority in front of us, and also looking at potentially cutting elements of the project so that we can meet the budget. And then this is all tied to the fact that our revenue source at this point is a loan from the iBank and has certain restrictions on it. So yeah, we're dealing with this, but it's not, I mean, most of the news you're receiving today about our position financially is pretty good news. But this project, unfortunately, right now is like you said, it's about a $2 million gap that we're working on and trying to figure out solutions that we can bring back to the council so we can move the project forward.
So which item or items put us over? Like,
I would have to, maybe others can speak to that because they've been working on it more than I have. But the one item that sticks out to me, and maybe this was not shocking, was the fencing. Yeah. The fencing alone, I heard was like $1 million just for all the fencing. And so that is one example of like, I think a wow moment that all the fencing was $1 million. Lisa, Ken, Brian, was there anything else that you heard from John that jumped off the page on what came out of this bid?
Primarily, you're right. Fencing was the biggest surprise in cost, but also I think just due to inflation, the cost of labor is up also. Just a lot of the things that would that they priced out individually or itemized were just a lot more expensive. But Bob is right. Fencing was the biggest expense, and the cost of lumber right now is just huge. So.
Yeah, just one more thing to add on that as well is the like the road and mitigation and stuff, because after we got all the entitlements back, there were certain requirements that were necessary. And so that inflated some of the costs, where we didn't anticipate.
Yeah. No, fencing is always expensive. It's just that it's more expensive now.
I'm glad you're aware of that, Mayor. But yeah, it still was no less shocking when we saw that fencing alone was $1 million.
Yeah, in conservancy projects, fencing is always big. It's just.
So more to come on that. The plan is, I think, to bring that back to council in 3 weeks with whatever solutions we come up with.
Yeah. Going forward, we're also looking at inflation, as talked about. According to the state budget, they do a forecast on the inflation as well. They are anticipating inflation to continue 3% year over year until 2025. How that can potentially affect the city is our pension. CalPERS has had a great year recently. And it traditionally lags as far as the cost hitting us, but we do intend to research pension strategies this fiscal year. What that looks like is exploring ideas about 115 trust or a pension obligation bond or additional payments to CalPERS, trying to start looking at that a little bit more closely. We also want to begin researching additional revenue sources. One item, of course, is the vacant house tax. The third item is our fees. So our master fees schedule went to council, and we mentioned we had a fee study done back in 2017. It's been a few years. It seems time to do another one. The purpose of the fee schedule is not to be profitable, but to recoup the cost of time for city services. And then finally, reevaluating the investment policy just to see another review of it, if it's still applicable, if there's something that is more beneficial. And then the last challenge and concern is ARPA. Since ARPA is expiring, no longer getting 1.5 million, that kind of leads back into looking into additional revenue sources. The general fund budget for next year, this is the summary at a high level. We have revenues at 21 million, expenditures at 19. That is an operational surplus of 1.8. So we're doing well operationally. That tends to be our kind of historical case. And then we use those funds for our capital expenditures. Our capital expenditures are going to be 3 million. That we're using that 1.8 and then also using unassigned fund balances of 1.1. That leads us to how we get our balanced budget for the next fiscal year. And these are our proposed fund balances. The second column are estimated 2021, 2022. We have actuals and are estimated what we think when it ends at June 30th. This differs from our revised budget. We are doing well in TOT, we're doing well in our revenues. If everything is how it's estimated, we think at June 30th, we will have an unassigned balance of around 2 million. That kind of does roll into the next fiscal year. With our budgeted revenues at 21, our expenditures at 22. We think our ending fund balance of June 2023 would be 9.9 million. 9.7 of that would be reserve money. And then the remaining 189,000 would be unassigned. That would leave our reserves at 50% of our operating expenses. So our unassigned will go down, but we would be fully funded going into next year. With that, if there's no other questions, I will move it to Brian Lopez to discuss performance measures.
All right, no questions. Thank you, Ken. We're actually introducing something really new to our budget. And basically, over the last several years, we've been working to enhance the budget, make it more useful for both the public as well as internally with staff. And ultimately, we really want to just make it just a really, really, great device for looking at and making sure that we're, keeping on track and really utilizing something that's going to really give us a lot of benefit here. And best practices are actually to add performance measures into the budget. And every year, we actually go out and we get awards from the GFOA and the CSMFO. I always butcher up the lettering on that one. And for the GFOA, they actually have been recommending for a long time that agencies put in performance measures into their budget. And recently, just this last year, they actually started requiring it to get the award, but they gave us a 1-year grace period. And so that year grace is up, but we use that year to really develop and figure out how we wanted to move forward. And so what you see before you right now on the screen is a snippet of what the performance measures will look like in the budget. And so we chose finance since we've already been covering all the other finance stuff too. We just felt like it made sense. And so this, among others, will be included in the budget with each department's narrative. And so what we basically asked was that each department provide both the department and divisions quantifiable measurements of estimated past activities and future anticipated activities with an eye towards self-accountability. So we really wanted these to be measures that would actually benefit each department and division and something that would actually add value rather than just kind of being an activity that we're just doing just to check a box. But we do anticipate enhancing this and refining it and really making it more useful, again, both externally as well as internally. And that's it on that. Any questions?
Are there additional performance measures that might be considered in the future? Like, is this just a sort of, the easy pickings for now, or?
Sorry, my dog's barking. Ask that question one more time. I apologize.
So is this just sort of like the easy pickings at this time, but potentially there are other measures too, or what is your thinking about it?
I mean, simply put, we obviously, we tried to make them valuable at this point, but, yeah, it's starting out small and we're going to expand it out. And so after this year and kind of seeing, what we have available to put in here and, what actually becomes valuable, what isn't, we'll go ahead and change it. So, I mean, yeah, in the short answer, yeah, we're starting out small, but we're going to make it a little bit more well-developed.
And Brian, I think maybe the mayor missed the comment about, so what you're seeing here, he's just showing you a couple from the finance department.
Yeah.
So he's not, Public Works has come up with a bunch. The planning department has come up with them. We're not sharing those with you today, but they have submitted those for the budget.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
With that, our next steps is simply the city council budget hearing is scheduled for June 7th. And if there's any additional questions or comments or feedback.
Yeah, so I was looking at the unassigned balance, pretty big drop between last year and proposed, or this past year and proposed. So basically, we're left with less wiggle room if we want to or have to fund additional projects during the year. If you could just explain that discrepancy and what the implications are for a much shrunken unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, the decrease comes from being used into the next fiscal year. If I could go up the previous slide, that last row from the bottom, adding the use of general fund unassigned balance of 1.1, that's what's decreasing from that big amount up to 0.1 number. And that's really for capital expenditures. So
Just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll add a comment and Ken, maybe correct me on this. But so go back 1 year and we're having this exact same meeting with this subcommittee. That number that Ken showed a year ago was not 2.1 million.
Yeah.
So that also is a function of us being generally, Ken and Lisa have a conservative approach. And so then as the year goes on, we actually find out that the unassigned was higher than we expected. So that's been the phenomenon. So the same thing last year. That was not 2.1 a year ago. It was maybe, I don't know I can't remember what it was. Ken might know. But then, various good news and it got ratcheted up. And if the trend continues, that would be the same phenomenon. We'll probably be back, if things keep going the way they're going after we're audited. I mean, that's the key, that 189, because that's the approach. There's, the conservative approach of budgeting that might be higher when we come back in January of next year. So.
Yeah, as I recall, it was less than 2 million.
It was definitely less than 2 million. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think it was like 1.3 or something like that, or 1.4? Anyway, thank you for the explanation. I don't have any other questions. I mean, I feel good that we have a conservative finance staff, and good that the numbers look pretty darn good. And I expect that we will do well on grants, to assist our priority projects. No guarantees, but as I mentioned today, the wind is at our back seemingly. So, yep. Robert, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I agree. We beefed up our grant writing capacity. Reserves are healthy. So that is really what, to me, has always been key, that no matter what kind of unanticipated expenses come across, we have a very healthy reserve. So, if we need to keep certain projects going, there's always certain unpredictable factors with inflation, COVID, et cetera. But I think this is undisputedly a very healthy budget still. So,
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for keeping us in the green.
Yeah, I love the simple presentations and the ability to, distill for us. It's great.
And Lisa, I'm going to put you on this. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second because we didn't talk about this earlier. But just on the theme and the cover, I know last year it was really cool what you guys did, and then you came up with a different idea for this year. So any update on how that's all coming together?
Yes. So this year we decided to feature the recipients of the CSFAC community grants.
I think you got it right.
Yes. We decided to feature the honorees from 2021-22, I believe. Yes, that fiscal year. So I reached out to all the recipients, and they've all been very responsive and excited. And they're all giving us pictures. So we figure the cover will be a collage, and inside each tab will highlight the nonprofit itself with pictures and a brief description. And of course, the cover page will talk about our program itself, which we're pretty proud of, because it really ties us into the community and builds partnerships.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
I was excited that they were so responsive, because everybody's so busy, but I'm already getting pictures in. So
we know the needs out there are great, and the nonprofits are doing really good work, and the community is paying more attention to them too, I think, in the last couple of years. So I think it's a great idea.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I know last year they had an incredible year for Coastside Gives, and it just occurred 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard, but it looks like this year they surpassed last year as well. So it looked like they had a really good year.
I heard that too.
Did you?
Both senior Coastsiders and even AAUW, who usually doesn't do as much as the other nonprofits or groups, they surpassed last year's goal by thousands. So it was quite a rewarding year for all the nonprofits. So
yeah, Puente got $250,000. They were the top.
I saw that.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
The only other one other thing I would mention is not to take for granted that we also had very successful negotiations with our unions for long-term contracts, and that, in terms of long-term budget stability, Lisa and her team, had very thoughtful negotiations, and it keeps those costs, anticipated. There'll be increases, but they're fixed increases, and that also is very positive looking long-term for our budget. That, that's a huge piece of our budget. So yeah, just because it happened a little while ago doesn't mean, hey, thank you every year that we have this incorporated already into our budget. So that's great.
It was a 5-year contract. That's right.
Yeah, I think I call you guys AdFin. AdFin did a wonderful job on the negotiations. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was the superstar at the recent HR conference we had here in Half Moon Bay. So.
Yay.
Because now with the inflation, of course, I think other agencies are going through negotiations right now. So it's a different time.
Yeah. Looking good, folks.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
I don't know if we checked to see if there's members of the public, but there is, and technically I think we should offer public comment.
Please do.
So we do see you there, August. We know you're not actually a typical member of the public, but this is a formal Brown Act subcommittee meeting. So if anyone wants to make public comment, please raise your hand at this time. Oh, he did raise his hand.
Oh, okay.
Are you taking care of that, Walfred?
Yeah, please, yeah, your speaker's
Hey,
unmuted.
yep, got it now. Thanks. Yeah, you called me out, Bob. I figured I should.
Sorry about that. We all know who you are.
Yeah, no, thanks. That was a really good, informative presentation from the accounting team. Yeah, really appreciated that. So looking forward to learning more at City Council as well.
Great. Okay, no question. Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
you can reach out to Lisa and her team anytime when you prepare your story when we get our budget to the council.
Okay, will do.
Thanks, August.
Good to see you, August.
Yeah, you as well. Have a good one.
I guess we can adjourn this meeting at this point then.
Yes, I guess so.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great evening. And they're going to go back to work finishing the budget over the next 2-3 weeks so we can bring that to the full council.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
night.
Bye.